Hi everyone, a very good afternoon to everyone. My name is Joanne and I will be your moderator for today's sharing. Thank you so much for tuning in. So before we start our session today, let me share with you a little background information about our center, SPICES. For those who first time hearing about us, SPICES is an acronym for Support for Parents, Infants and Children through Early Services. We provide early intervention support for preschool children with developmental delays and disabilities. We do that through our in-person, also virtual sessions. There's a big part that we are doing is to support with parents and caregivers by providing them with a practical guidance on how to support their child's development. For more information, you are welcome to log on to our website at www.spices.org.my to learn more about us. Once again, welcome to those who just tuned in. In this afternoon, we are so honored to have Dr. Cindy Chan Su-Hui with us, who has a good wealth of experience and expertise in child's development, especially in sleep issues among young children with special needs. Dr. Cindy is a consultant developmental pediatrician from Sunway Medical Center. She obtained her medical degree from University Kebangsaan Malaysia and further her subspecializations in developmental pediatrics. She's also a member of the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health. She accomplished clinical fellowship in developmental medicine and community child health at the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne. Dr. Cindy's specialty includes ASD, ADHD, cerebral palsy, learning delay, and other special needs among young children. So without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Cindy Chan to share with us how bedtime does not need to be a bad time. Dr. Cindy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joanne. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That was a very nice video. I really enjoyed it, and I really agree with your mantra that every child of any ability is also God's child, God's children. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm very blessed to be given this opportunity to share with different groups of families, caregivers, intervention providers, with some of my ideas, some of my experiences. I do not profess to be an expert. I do not profess to be a professional, but everyone has a role to play. When we help a family and a child with special needs, everyone has a role to play. Yeah, so my role will be from a point of a background of a pediatrician, yeah, but also in terms of as a developmental pediatrician. Okay, now let me see. There's something not quite clear about this. Hold on, I seem to be okay. All right. Okay. So I shall minimize this.
Yeah, it's clear.
Clear. Okay, so I'll start now. So today my talk will be sharing on mainly sleep issues and in children with developmental concerns. Yeah, it might not necessarily be a developmental impairment or developmental disorder or any clear diagnosis, but certainly this group of children have developmental delays. Okay, but of course, a lot of the strategies here, a lot of the issues are also seen in children with typical development. Yeah, so not necessarily just children with developmental problems. Bit slow to move. Okay, so why is sleep so important? Now, we all know that sleep is super important for not just our physical health, but our mental health as well. Our spiritual health and mental health depends on our physical health as well. And so we need to take care of our physical and physiologic needs if we are going to function well. And in children especially, right, they not only need sleep to rest, to recharge their battery. It allows cells in their body, especially damaged cells in the early years, to repair itself. Okay, good sleep will affect how we cope with the daily stresses in life, how we approach problems, yeah, our attention, our focus. And especially when we are in a pandemic, everyone has to pay attention to sleep in its role in our immune function. A very special thing about children is that in sleep, they actually grow. Yeah. And this is because during sleep, growth hormone is secreted more by our brain. Okay. And this is essential to good physical growth in children. And so it's really not surprising to see a child who is not sleeping well at all from a young age. They tend to be very small, yeah, on their growth chart, their height and their weight. They're just not growing as they're just not thriving as well as other children who sleep well through the night. Okay, now this one you can find anywhere on the internet, right? Recommended sleep hours based on the age of the child. I just like to draw your attention to the fact that, in infants, in the first 3 months, they actually produce much sleep, pretty much more than half the day, right? But they are awake for short periods in between. In total, I would say 2/3 of the day they are asleep. Now, what's also interesting is if you look at the toddlers and the kindergarten age group, they're actually about the same in terms of sleep requirements. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that when they are in the preschool years, they should sleep less. You have a phenomenon where now kids go to kindergarten in the morning and in the afternoon they are in daycare with some tuition already to put in the hours to prepare them for school. And so it's important to remember that preschool children still need as much sleep as most toddlers. By the time they are in school age, though, they actually go without a nap during the day. If your child is in school age and is maybe a teenager, and if they need some catch-up sleep, or perhaps the previous day's demands have been extra, and they might need a short nap, try and limit it to at least 20 to 30 minutes. Not quite enough to reach rapid eye to the very deep sleep, but enough to just give them a boost to last to the rest of the evening and the night. Okay, otherwise you'll be chasing your own tail and setting a vicious cycle of this sleep debt. Okay, now this puts into perspective the changes that occur to our sleep wake cycle from the time you are newborn right up to adult, and how the pattern shift to more and more consolidated sleep duration through the night. You may be surprised to see that in a 9-year-old child, the advice is still to let them go to bed by evening, 7, 8 o'clock, yeah, which is quite unheard of in Asian countries because our sun sets later, and a lot of our parents, our families are, both parents are wage earners. So that's the time that they actually spend the family time. But really, if the child has got good daylight activity, daytime activities, many of them are actually ready for bed by the time they are around 7 to 8 o'clock. Okay. Now, there are many types of sleep problems in children. These are the common ones. And of course, the most common one is avoid going to bed, resist bedtime, or difficulty in actually falling asleep. The child is already in bed, but just not falling asleep. Another common problem is sudah tidur, bangun lagi, and bangun many times. All right. Parasomnias are night terrors, which usually can happen around the preschool years, late toddler to preschool years. It's a very common occurrence. There's really nothing you need to worry about. Just quickly, the child is actually half asleep. Just calmly lead the child back to bed and calmly, gently put the child back to bed. But it is a normal part of childhood. Okay. Now, circadian rhythm dysregulation, the normal sleep wake cycle, the hormonal regulation of sleep, daytime, nighttime, when the sun, we all evolve around the sun. Yeah, our everything on earth, from plants to animals to humans, our rhythm, our physiologic rhythm, our sleep wake cycle, they're all regulated around the sun. This is how we evolve over the millennia. So sometimes in disordered brain, especially a child with brain injury, this normal circadian rhythm of hormonal regulation of your sleep can go haywire. So I won't really go into detail about that perhaps at the end if there are questions. Another common thing that we encounter in pediatric practice is obstructed breathing during sleep. The child may have a nose obstruction or very large tonsils at the back of the throat. And so when they lie down flat, their airway is actually more narrow and it can obstruct their airways and they may not get enough good quality sleep. they may be asleep, but it's not good quality sleep, and they actually don't reach the deep sleep as much as you would like. Okay, and of course, in some children, especially in children with um, very severe behavioral disorders, they can have a complete terbalik of the sleep pattern. They are awake all night and asleep during the daytime. Okay. Now, how do sleep problems affect young children? Of course, all these are logical consequences lah. They are sleepy. They cannot focus. Their developmental progress might be quite impaired, especially if their sleep-wake cycle is severely disrupted. Yeah, it can affect their behavior and their mood. But when you talk about children with special needs, right, there are so many other factors that get impacted. If all these factors on the left can also affect their nutrition, how they are able to feed. Yeah, children with physical disability might be predisposed to more muscle pain. Yeah? Children with cerebral palsy may have more spasm, may have more spasticity, and then it becomes a vicious cycle. In children with more behavioral learning type of problems, they may have more irritable mood. They may become very they're easily prone and triggered to tantrums, more meltdowns. And if they are very impaired in their communication, they often use aggression as a way of communicating their distress. And overall, when you're talking about children with special needs, there's an increased burden of care for them, as well as a lot of stress to their caregivers. So when you compare children who are typically developing, of course, sleep problem is not uncommon. Yeah, about a quarter to a third of children, especially in the early childhood, parents will complain that they will have periods of sleep problems. But the causes are often mostly behaviorally based. Yeah, there's unlikely to be a structural problem or a medical problem for it, and often it doesn't go on and on forever. The children tend to get better after a few weeks. Yeah, but when you talk about kids with significant neurodevelopmental problem, now the frequency increases. The incidence is up to 50, more than half of kids in children with developmental problems. And the factors that are causing the sleep problems are not just behavior now. Okay, they have neurologic problems, they have medical conditions, they may even have psychiatric problems, and many of them are on medication. The side effects of medication can also contribute to the sleep problem. And unlike children who are typically developing, these sleep problems in children with developmental problems, they tend to be very long. Yeah, they tend to go on and off lah. Sometimes it get better, sometimes it goes away, sometimes it comes back, but it tends to be recurrent. So a problem brain is very predisposed to a problem sleep. And often they also will have problem behaviors. Okay, so these are some of the common ones that I encounter. Now, some genetic conditions like Rett syndrome, Angelman syndrome, Williams syndrome, they actually, the sleep problem is actually part of confirming the diagnosis in these kids actually. Yeah, the clinical profile of the syndrome will always include sleep disorders. Okay, now just a slide on children with very complex multiple physical disability. They have physical disability, they often have cognitive or intellectual or learning problems, they often have behavioral problems, they often have communication problems, right? So a lot of issues there. But underlying that, they also have difficulties with medical problems like, a child with poor muscle tone or abnormal muscle control. They can also be easily prone to not being able to protect their airways at night. So they might have obstructed airways, right? When they sleep too long in one position, they tend to have pain, joint pain, bony pain, and that can disrupt their sleep. And then that predisposes to increase rigid muscle, the spasticity can increase, or the dystonia. The dystonia is when you have that thing, very stiff cramp kind of muscles. Many children with brain injury have epilepsy, and these seizures can happen at night. Many children with physical disability are very predisposed to acid reflux from the stomach. And that is worse when the child lies down. As opposed to when the child is upright, gravity will reduce the acid from going up to the esophagus, right? And many of these children have difficulties managing their secretions, their saliva, and they can actually choke on the saliva when they are lying down. It's harder for them to swallow it, okay? And of course, with all the pooling of the saliva and the secretion, they are also very prone to dental caries, dental pain, bone pain in the gums here, okay? Now, what about children with autism spectrum? A very big, large group of children with developmental problems have autism, yeah, in my practice. Now, I would say at least half of the individuals I see will have at least one type of sleep problem at least once in their life, okay? They are more than 10 times likely to get insomnia, difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep enough, and they tend to persist, yeah? Now, in particular groups like children with autism, anxiety plays a very important role in their difficulty falling asleep. And why are children with autism so predisposed to sleep problems? Yeah, number one, if you are familiar working with children with autism, you will know that many of them have difficulties expressing their needs, expressing their ideas. Okay, and because of that, they cannot also express their emotions or understand emotional cues from other people. They have difficulty allowing themselves to be regulated, yeah, by an adult, like calming them down. They have difficulty reading the cues from the adults, and they have difficulties communicating their needs. Another particular trait or characteristic is children with autism, or in fact any individual with autism, even as an adult, they tend to have rather inflexible thinking. They have patterns of inflexible thinking, and in terms of behavior, this can look like difficulty accepting changes. So when they transition from, say, the evening activity, everybody, busy, dinner, TV, and then suddenly it's time to go to bed, they cannot shift their thinking or their behavior from this context to the different type of situation. And of course, a lot of individuals have autism, who have autism have sensory processing differences. Okay, now the sensory processing differences may be mild, they are always there, whether you recognize them or not. Okay, but in some children, they are actually so impairing that they become a disorder. Okay, and of course, like all problem brains, sometimes their melatonin production not well regulated. And so all this predisposes to anxiety. And as we all know, when you're anxious, you really cannot fall asleep easily. So when I try and troubleshoot, I will always ask parents a very careful sleep history. Okay, so that is part of good assessment, even though it sounds like just talking. Yeah, but talking with the parents is where you get the most information. Okay, not questionnaires, not playing with the child, just talking about sleep with the parents. You get the most information. As a pediatrician, I will also need to take a very systematic approach, right? To, is there any medical problems? Am I missing anything? Are there any other risk factors that that the parents may not be aware of? Is the child on medication? Are there drug with more than one medication? Got drug interaction or not? Okay. Sometimes I send the family off with a sleep diary first so that we know how severe the problem is. Standardized parent questionnaires are often useful, but they are not every parent are well educated enough to understand this very English-based kind of questionnaire. So sometimes I help the family ask some of the questions there. So when I take a sleep history, these are some of the questions that I might ask. Okay, and I think I've already mentioned many of them in the earlier slides. Okay, but I also want to know, yes, the child doesn't seem to be easily falling asleep. The child may not sound like he's getting enough sleep, but is this translating to impairment in function during the day? Okay, can he function in his that optimal range during the day? If it doesn't, it cannot, it's really impacting on his function, then that's a problem. We need to prioritize that. So this is an example of a sleep diary that I use. So the arrows will show you when the time the child gets up. The arrow going down means the child is being put down to sleep. And the shaded areas is when the child remains asleep. So you can see in this child, the child is being put down to bed at around, what time is that? Quite late, huh? The child is being put to bed quite late, around 10 o'clock. Yeah, the child sometimes doesn't take that long to fall asleep. But what happens is the child sometimes wakes up in the night and then have to take daytime naps. So this is not that disordered lah. This one, the parents wanted the child to go to bed earlier instead of midnight. Most of the time is at midnight, the one on the right. So want the child to go back to sleep earlier instead of late onset. So this is delayed onset problem, delayed onset of sleep. So like I mentioned just now, as a pediatrician, these are the things I would do, yeah, to identify and treat any contributing medical problems first. Otherwise, you may be chasing up the wrong tree. Okay, I won't go too much into detail, but sometimes, right, when you have children with developmental problems or complex physical disability, their nutrition may be not great. And so you need to look into the dietary history as well, because iron deficiency is extremely common and it's actually more common than you think. Okay, a child who's not taking enough meat, red meat, a child who's not taking enough green vegetables, yeah, they are predisposed to iron deficiency. A child who's not getting enough sunlight, a child who's not taking enough range of vegetables may not be getting vitamin D as well. Okay, so these are things that can predispose to restless sleep, yeah, at night. So I will always try and set goals with the parents. No point you put your goals onto the parents or their family's expectations. They may have their own preferred family routine, which you have to incorporate when you set goals. Always ensure good sleep hygiene, whether you are talking about a typically developing child or a child with developmental problems. Okay, and often I always tell parents, when you leave my room, 50% of what I will talk about, you forget already. And by next week, 75% or so you forgot. So let's write it down. Okay. Sometimes when the problem isn't very clear, we fill up a sleep diary like the picture I showed you just now, and then we review them soon. I warn them about extinction burst, which means sometimes behaviors will get worse first before they can get better. The child might memberontak first, try and fight back, try and resist going to bed even more. They will tekan the volume first before things can actually get better. So first things first, these are the key strategies: sleep hygiene, behavioral mod. This does not look like my latest slide lah. Okay, never mind. Let's see. Okay, never mind. Sorry about that. Sleep hygiene means healthy sleep habits, right? Healthy sleep routines. Okay, we'll talk a bit more. This is always the first step. Okay, it starts with predictability. It starts with consistency, right? It starts with routine. Predictability, consistency, routine are lifesavers when you're talking about young children, okay, or any child with a developmental impairment, developmental disability. It helps them understand the world around them. It helps you maintain, behavioral expectations. It helps the child, give the child some structure, okay? And so try and stick to some similar times to go to bed as well as to wake up every day. Try and also maintain plus or minus 1 hour on weekends and holidays as well. Don't let it lari too much, okay? Don't let it run too much. The environment is also important in sleep hygiene. Quiet, calm, darken, but may not be completely dark. When you're talking about a child with, especially a young child or an anxious child, pitch black may not be the answer, but certainly something slightly darkened, no fluorescent white light, because lights, daylight, fluorescent light, they trigger, they suppress the melatonin, our sleep hormone, from being released from our brain. Okay, and of course in the evenings, up to 1-2 hours before bedtime, minimize the excitement. Keep all devices out of the bedroom so that the child doesn't access this. Okay, turn off all screen devices 1 hour before bedtime. Now, screen devices not only do the screens rapidly change and trigger lots of neuronal brain cell activity because it's rapidly changing, they also emit blue light. And blue light is something that triggers activity, that arousal in your brain. And so your brain may not get to the delta waves for sleep. Okay. Now, some tips for nighttime, other than the regular sleep and wake time, okay, the routine should be calming. It's a pattern that the child can learn to expect. Yeah, the younger the child, then it's very basic. But the older child, it will be good to actually put them to bed, have a quiet chat about how their day went, and leave them when they are still awake so that they can learn to read, or do some some quiet activity with a jigsaw puzzle or something, and then they fall asleep independently. Okay, make sure your child feels safe at night. Okay, this is of course, you don't give the child shows or video games that are scary. Okay, sometimes children need a dim, warm colored night light to feel reassured. Okay, and praise your child when they are acting brave. Okay, praise their effort. Yeah? And of course, the physical and environment needs to be conducive in terms of temperature and noise and brightness. Asian countries, especially in bigger families and in smaller, where they are where they don't have much space in the family house, the family home, it's not uncommon to see families sleeping together in the living room. Yeah, especially when they are big family with only a one or two bedded flat, and sometimes they will set up the living room to go to sleep there. Everybody sleeps there, and so this is not difficult. It's quite difficult to adjust. Yeah, so then we try other ways, like maybe everybody needs to reset their bedtime a little earlier so that the child gets 1 hour of sleep extra, or maybe one of the rooms maybe can make into a children's room, and perhaps the adults can continue sleeping outside. Okay, in daytime, during the daytime, keep daytime naps really short, especially for children who are more than 5 years old, not more than half an hour if possible. Don't try and make up for last night's sleep, because you will always continue playing catch up then, for days on end. Daytime is when you want to get sensible food into your child, proteins, yeah, sensible lah. It's not perfect, but it's got to be sensible. Okay, avoid carb rich snacks, sweets, and of course before bedtime, 1 to 2 hours before bedtime, make sure that the dinner is just right, not too much, not too little. Also important and also difficult to get during this pandemic months, is to get natural sunlight as much as possible, and a lot of energetic activity. The younger the child, the more energetic activity they need in order to regulate their normal sleep wake circadian rhythm and melatonin levels. Okay, and of course avoid caffeine. Chocolate contains caffeine. Yeah. Now, when you have an anxious child who keeps looking at the clock, oh my goodness, it's already 10 and I'm not asleep, and tomorrow I've got a test. Please move the clock away from the child so that the child doesn't have to keep checking the clock at night in his bedroom. Okay. Now, when you have a child who's always ruminating, worrying about, they will catastrophize over everything, that's just their personality and their character, and they need to learn to cope with it, with you to guide them as they grow up. Okay, so try and tackle some of these fears during the day, so that the child already has a kind of game plan and doesn't need to ruminate or dwell on it too much right at bedtime. If the child brings up the problem already at bedtime, try and gently problem solve. But if it's clear that the problem needs a bit more time, a bit more planning, just maybe help the child to say, okay, we know that this is a problem. I will help you plan something out in the morning, but we can do this first. Okay, so that the child is reassured that somebody will help him with his problem the next day. Some children who are very anxious, they need extra levels of calming routines. Some may need sleep relaxation strategies. Some children have specific sensory needs. They might need to twiddle with something. They might need their comfort toy, or they might need a comfort set of toys. Yeah, they might need their therapy dog with them. So these are children with an extra level of needs in terms of their sensory and anxiety needs. It's important to help them feel safe. Now, when you have a child with communication delays, for example, autism, even more, you need to make sure that cues about bedtime, it's time to go to bed, you have to get ready. They need to be very tangible. They need to be really clear and consistent. Yeah. Tangible means you need to make them understand there is a passage of time and there will be changes coming. And these changes are there to help you get ready for something. Yeah. And just talking about it, of course, may not be that effective because they have communication delays. They may have very good speech, but they may not process your language so well. Okay. And so sometimes you need to cue them like 30 minutes before. Okay, in half an hour, 30 minutes is time for bed. Yeah. Remember? Yeah, we talked about this. And then you can show them some pictures there. And then it's important to come back again 15 minutes before that, another reminder. And then maybe some kids 5 minutes before. So that by the time it comes to the actual point of having to get up and go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, the child will, you're actually helping the child with that sudden change. It's no longer unexpected. It's a more gradual, stepwise transition. And so children tend to be very rigid and inflexible when they have communication problems. So this is one way that you can help them transition. Use a lot of visual support in some kids. So that's an example of a visual board that you can use. Try and put keywords there, not so much for the child to read if the child cannot read, but for you to use the same consistent keywords each time. It helps them stay on track. And praise success at every little step, even if they don't actually reach all the steps successfully, it's important to praise individual steps first. So the child is motivated. Oh, okay, I couldn't do step 5, but I could do step 1 and step 2 well. Or is that take-home message that I can? Yeah. If the child wakes up at night distressed, right? You as an adult need to stay calm and put your child back to bed gently using the same routine, because how they fell asleep is how they are going to learn to fall asleep on their own again. Okay. So, but if you are going to use, come, we take you out, I'm going to rock you, I'm going to let you drive around in the car at night to the taman, you are not using the same routine that the child has been familiarized with, and so it's actually it's taking a step back. Yeah. So the second step is behavioral modification, like a bit higher level. I mean, sleep hygiene is also a lot of behaviors, right? But in children with sleep problems, right, behaviors, you don't underestimate. The home and family environment, sometimes we try our best, but some families, like I mentioned, it's just not possible. But we do try and highlight, get the family, get the parents, get the caregivers to reflect. Yeah, because when they self-reflect on their environmental factors, then they themselves can come up with a solution without you. Okay. Lack of limit setting is a very important one, which I want to talk a little bit more. We've talked about media content and the blue screen light from screens already. Now, sleep onset association problem is a very specific type of behavioral problem around sleep. Okay, it's important to remember that when, like all people, when children sleep, they go through sleep-wake cycle, 4 or 5 different stages through the night. Okay, they don't just stay asleep. But when they wake up at night, most children are not aware that they're awake and they will just put themselves to bed. Okay, and the child who falls asleep independently will also be more likely to put himself back to bed if he should wake up at night. So with that in mind, when you rock a child to bed, that's how the child falls asleep. What do you think will happen when the child wakes up at night? Will the child be able to put the child himself back to bed? Most likely not, right? Most likely he will still need you as his association, or the rocking as an association. Yeah. And so that is something to be mindful of. When you reinforce that kind of behavior, you are unintentionally reinforcing this behavior. Okay, this association with needing to be rocked, or this association with needing to breastfeed. Okay, even though the child is already 4 years old. So that's the sleep onset type. Okay. Now the other big one is the limit setting type. Limit setting means you've already put the child to bed, okay? And the child tries to resist bedtime. And you have difficulty in setting limits around bedtime. You keep going to attend to the child, keep picking the child up, and sometimes actually engaging the child. It becomes playtime again, and you're already so sleepy, and the child still wants to play with you. So that is one example of difficulties with limit setting. I think as all parents, it's a learning curve. I myself, as a mother, I'm a mother to 3 kids. My oldest is already going to university. I'm also guilty of all these things. Yeah. But like I said, it's a learning curve. Okay. And sometimes when the sleep problems become a real problem and is impacting on your daytime function, both parents and child, then something's got to change. Yeah. So like I mentioned just now, the learning theory is important, helping families understand how the caregiver can unintentionally be reinforcing the behavior that you want to extinguish. The key phrase is the way we fall asleep at the start is the way we expect to return to sleep when we wake at night. Okay, so this one is kisah benar, right? Father, mother, the whole family sleeps. So long as the father and mother gets to sleep, they don't really reinforce anything. And so the expectations, the lifestyle, the cultural beliefs and practices of every family is different. What is a problem for you might not be a problem for another parent. Okay, so being conscious of what behaviors you're reinforcing. That's what I've been saying. Okay, very important. In a home with extended family, other caregiving adults like grandparents, aunties and uncles must also be on the same page, must also agree. And so sometimes when we write a written management plan, give it to the child, give it to the parent, I will also give them a little simple printed tip sheet. I will encourage them to share with all the family members. Okay. So just a quick slide on melatonin. Okay. Now, melatonin I use sparingly, but there is a higher frequency of melatonin use in the population of children I work with, because I work with children with very complex disability, very injured brains sometimes. Okay, they have more than one type of disability. They might have physical, developmental, learning, and autism all put together. And so melatonin is useful to reset a very problematic rhythm, but it's never used as the first step. It must always be used in consistent implementation with the good sleep hygiene, consistency in limit setting, parents being consistent. And then when the child wakes up, be conscious of how you actually reinforcing the unwanted behaviors as well. Now, melatonin, the ones that are available in Malaysia are short acting. They act for a short while. So they help in getting the child to sleep. So if the child has a sleep onset problem or sleep delay, cannot fall asleep, already 1 to 2 hours, they cannot sleep, melatonin tends to help. But long-acting melatonin is not available in this country, not as I'm aware of. But overseas, it is definitely available. And so melatonin, the long-acting one, is actually useful to actually maintain and reduce the frequent night wakings as well, the maintenance of sleep after the child has fallen asleep. So melatonin, I would use it for as young as maybe 2+, depending on how severe the other medical issues are. A very good safety profile. You just need a very low dose in very young kids, as low as 1 milligram, sometimes already enough. Sometimes we need to go up to even 6 or even more than that. I seldom go beyond 6. But I would reserve it as a last resort. It is useful. It's like Panadol. When you're unwell, you get some Panadol to help you sleep better so that you can function better, eat better, and get better. And then, but it's not really used long term. Okay. Now, I will leave you with this last slide. I don't think I need to talk very much about the impact of COVID-19 and what it has, how it has impacted every aspect of our lives as we know it. Whether we are, whether you have a child with developmental problems or not, okay? From excessive screen time everywhere you look and every person in the family, to the lack of access to physical activity in sunlight, okay, to staying up late because the adults are also going to bed later, yeah. And of course, um, when there's increased, um, the family being together and having a lot of challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of families are also disrupted in terms of their social, economic, um, abilities, as well as in terms of the emotional needs. And children, if they're not careful, our kids are the ones to suffer the most from the anxiety and the stress. Yeah. And so there are certainly an increase in sleep problems, isn't it? Yeah. So I hope that my brief sharing will be helpful to help you think of perhaps some of the problem solving that you can try with your kids if you are having kids with sleep problems. Yeah, so I'm open to questions now. I will stop slide sharing. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Cindy, so much for your very informative and some of the useful tips that you shared with the parents just now. And we do have a few of the questions that were collected in parallel. Some may be already covered during your sharing just now, but maybe I'll just on top of it, I'll clarify more, get more clarification from your side. So the first questions will be like you shared just now, during because of the COVID pandemic, the impact of it, we know that many of people are still working from home. So let's say if like the parents is already very tired due to the messed up sleep schedules for themselves and also for the children, and they tend to wake up several times a night. So is there any small step that they can first to take to begin to understand and to analyze their child's sleep problems, like the one you shared just now, the diary, the sleep diary? Besides that, how do parents know how to set an achievable goal for themselves and also their child?
Okay, it all starts with what the parents model. Yeah, if the parents themselves, because of COVID, and the need to catch up on screen work-related things even at night, then it normalizes excessive screen time even past bedtime to the child. The child seeing what the parents do, the child also has easier access to their own screen devices being hooked up at home. So the boundaries are not clear. In the pandemic, everyone's boundaries have been really blurred, it's no longer clear. And so the first thing to do is to make boundaries clear, make limits clear, be consistent. Today going to bed at 10 o'clock, tomorrow going to bedtime is 11 o'clock, the next day bedtime is 12 o'clock. What limits are you telling your child? Yeah, your child is already tired, ready for bed at 8, but today, tomorrow, day after, sleeping time, bedtime are all different. So I think the first step I would do is with the father, mother, and maybe, I don't know, grandma or something like that, decide on common goals first. You and your spouse need to decide what time do you want your child to go to bed? What type of bed routine we want to, bedtime routine do we want to enforce on a consistent basis? If your child try to resist and come out, what should you and I do? Cannot I do something? Then your spouse does something else. So so sometimes just having a chat about that, how our grown-up behavior is actually reinforcing this uncertainty, unpredictability, inconsistency. Actually, that's all you need to do most of the time, to be consistent in terms of your limits, to be consistent in terms of that routine going to bed. No? Once your child is being put to bed, the child comes out again, you must have a game plan. Both of you need to be on the same page. Yeah, I think I will start with something simple like that first. And of course, the screen time. That is part of a good bedtime routine. Really limit screen time at least an hour before bed. And that includes the adults. Yeah, it includes the adults. I would spend the evening topping up or recharging the child's emotional needs. Yeah, in terms of attachment, quality time, attention from the parents. So that when the child is really, when it comes to bedtime, the child feels secure. Yeah, the child feels attached, and the child doesn't has less of a need to come looking for more attention to top up when you have already topped up well before bedtime, right? So that once the child to 2 hours of screen-free time for the whole family is really emotional top-up time for everyone. Then everybody goes to bed feeling quite topped up lah. The battery is fully charged. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I heard is like the parents and the family members have to have the same goal, same style. The plans must
Kind
they
of
must have
like,
the,
kind
yeah.
of. It's easier said than done. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, because I most of the time it may not take two parents to get the child to sleep. Maybe either parent, mother or the father usually did the
So,
jobs.
so when you have parents who don't see eye to eye on things, or one parent who always wants to cop out, take the easy way out, the important thing is to take a no blame approach first. Talk to them about a no blame approach first. That everybody has a certain style, everybody has a certain role to play, and sometimes when mom is stressed out, that laid back attitude might actually help, right? So sometimes it's a balance. So when you paint it like that you are a tag team, everybody has their strengths, so they actually learn to meet in the middle lah, for the sake of the child.
Thank you so much for the sharing. Talking about the screen time, like nowadays, a lot of kids are having having online classes at home. So actually, technically, they're already having quite a lot of screen time, but it's not an entertainment.
Wow.
But what do you see on these issues, that would it really still affecting the children's sleep, even though it's not like
so excessive screen time means it has impacted on the child's function. Okay, the child's social emotional function, the child's sleep, and the child's focus, and of course gaming. Gaming is a whole different Pandora's box there. But it should not take this online learning, right? If you ask me to sit for say 5 or 6 subjects, with only a recess time or 15-minute break here and there, I don't see how that's going to work for adults. Okay, we will always reach for our phone and start to scroll through during meetings already, or Facebook, right? Or check our emails, or just not paying attention to the screen. How do you expect a child to do that? Unless the child is a teenager, motivated to achieve his or her own goals because exam is coming. When we're talking about an immature child or a child with developmental delays, it is not developmentally sensible. I disagree with transplanting the entire complete school syllabus, curriculum, and timetable and just transplant it into online learning from 7:45 to 2 o'clock. That's ridiculous. But some parents want it. Teachers will be even happier if you give them more time to prepare their slides, or to send homework and to mark homework. But teachers are also having to succumb to expectations by a lot of parents. So ultimately, it is up to the individual family to decide what you want to prioritize. If your child has a developmental problem, or if your child has got much higher sensory needs, much more movement needs, sensory motor needs, then it's time to prioritize. I would encourage the family then to understand what is important for you and your child. You know your child better than the teachers do. You know your child better. Just because your child sits in front of a screen online class from morning to afternoon does not mean he's engaged in the class. That time is better spent one-on-one, learning how to make an omelette, learning to hang clothes, and learning to wash the toilet, to me. When else are you going to teach your child this? So if that matters so much to you, and you see clearly that your child is, now not every child is the same, but if you're talking about a child who cannot engage, who cannot absorb that online learning for hours and end, you have to make a decision. You have to decide how to cut short, how to limit. Maybe focus on just the core subjects. Choose the core subjects that you really need. Until you are an adult also, you need English, you need BM, you need math, you need maybe science. But do you really need geography, history, ICT, what else? Moral, art. How on earth are you going to do art
It's better if the child can learn to fine motor skills and eye-hand coordination doing real life work. If you can even reduce one or two lesser intense kind of subjects that the child can catch up. If the child is interested, if the child is motivated, or if the child memang talented in that, then go ahead. But if the child is really juggling and really cannot cope, lost, already hanyut, no drifting, why would you put him or her in front of a screen just to follow the classroom timetable for appearances? I don't agree. To me lah, but that's just me. Okay, but this one I feel very strongly about. I think the pandemic has brought this thing into such stress, right, for families. Few months, a lot of families can cope. Second year already, a lot of families cannot cope. Yeah. So do what is important. Brave enough to prioritize what is important for your child. When you're talking about a child with developmental problems, developmental delays, learning difficulties, is it important that the child attends and submits homework for 10 subjects? Are you going to make that child take 10 subjects at SPM? Better you reduce focus on what you can achieve, isn't it? Always work with your end goal in mind and work backwards for your child with developmental problems. Because if you want to catch everything, you won't get it. You have to choose your battles, especially during the pandemic. Yeah.
I really agree. Dr. Cindy mentioned about the prioritize what is important, not only for the parents, what they can do, also for the children themselves. We didn't, yeah. So because we can know that the activities like you shared just now, the daytime activities is really affecting the sleep times at the night as well.
And if the child spends too much time in front of the screen, online learning, online homework, gaming, coding, don't know what, it takes the place of outdoor activities, which is even makes things worse. They are not ready for sleep when they are sedentary in front of the TV or in front of the screen all day. Instead of cycling, playing badminton, hanging clothes, sweeping the porch.
Some cultures helping out.
Yeah.
And another question is to be related to the how to get the child to sleep independently by their own, fall into sleep and stay sleeping. So you mentioned just now some of them they may have like some plush toys, the dolls that need their comfort. But what if the one can comfort is the mother? So
that is the commonest association lah.
So because culturally they
that is the commonest
in Asia most of the child sleep with the parents until they reach the adolescence, maybe due to the limitation of the room, the bedroom or the other issues. So especially for a child with special needs, the parents may feel insecure to let their child sleep at their own, maybe due to some of the epilepsy conditions. So what is your suggestion to let the parents to start to train the child to sleep independently? How to justify?
So if the parents perceive that co-sleeping, co-sleeping sleeping in the same bed as the parent, one or two parents, that's co-sleeping. I think it's important not to be judgmental. Okay, like I said, I also have been guilty of co-sleeping. Yeah, you do what it takes to survive and stay sane during the day. Okay, but if it is perceived to be a problem to the parent, because the mom is not getting enough sleep, say the child is waking up a lot, and the mom resorts to carrying the child as a resort, and then must lie down when the mom is tired already, then and the mom is not getting enough sleep during the day. So it's important to go back to the daytime. What happens during the day? What happens just before bedtime? Yeah, how the child goes to sleep, okay, where the child goes to sleep will all affect how the child sleeps through the night. When the child wakes up at night, he will still go back to all these factors here, okay? When the child goes to sleep in the living room, and then you carry and put in the bed, when the child wakes up, it's a different place from where he fell asleep. Problem. Another example, when the child sleeps in the buoy, and then transfer to the bed, also problem, because when he wakes up, he's no longer in the buoy. Same thing. Another association is if the child sleeps with the mom closely, smell the mom like that, and the child wakes up and the mom is nowhere there, then of course what do you think will happen? The child will go looking for the mother. Now, if this is okay for the mom and the father, so that everybody gets enough sleep, then it's not a problem for them. It's not a problem for anyone else. But if it's a problem for the mom, then we need to start thinking of replacing the association with something else. So you can overlap the association with, say, maybe a bantau busuk, that pillow or a favorite soft toy, and building a very positive, very calming bedtime routine involving that security object, like a blankie or a pillow or a stuffed toy. Telling bedtime story with the stuffed toy, listening to the story as well. So that becomes part of the child's bedtime routine. And then if the mom wants to sleep but doesn't want to carry the child, okay, maybe sit down but not lie down. Still physically close to the child, but not actually lying down or cuddling the child. Physically still available, emotionally available, but stepwise, just take one step back first. A lot of kids, especially kids with high needs, it's very difficult for both mother and child to give up everything. Mom has a lot of worries, anxiety, guilt. Child has a lot of needs, right? And so spend a lot more time topping up the emotional needs during the waking hours. Build a positive bedtime routine that makes the child feel safe. Step back one step at a time. Don't leave the child in the room. Okay, bye-bye. You cry also, I'm not going to come in. That is just more traumatic for this child. Yeah. So step back one at a time. Very graded, stepwise kind of backtrack lah. Sometimes children cannot. Okay, I'll just switch the association and include transition another association into the picture first as I back out one by one. Yeah.
So can I say that, like, if a mother or father would like to train their child to sleep independently, it have to make it like a fading off.
Feeding might do better for this mom who obviously for the child to reach a point, 4 5 years old, still need the mom to cuddle to sleep. And the child wakes up still looking for the mom. So this is something very ingrained emotionally and psychologically. So we need to take the gentler approach. I would do that lah, because I don't want to add more emotional trauma to this child. And so it starts with how and where, when you put the child to bed. It starts with that routine. So that when the child wakes up, the child doesn't need the mom lying down. But if the mom were to come in because the child crying or came to look, at least the mom can still put the child gently, lead the child back to bed, put the child back onto the bed, pet, and no need to lie down lah. Just continue to sit next to the child and pet, which was how you did it earlier. So how you did it earlier will also influence how you're going to put the child to bed if the child wakes up at night.
We have a question from the viewers from Facebook. By the way, Dr. Cindy, can you put the mic closer to?
Yeah.
So it's about the sleep realization techniques. That will you recommend winding down with the kids with the warm bath before?
Of course. Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
what are the recommended time before sleep? Like
that is up to the family's practice. Some children go to the babysitter, come back already all bathed and changed and fed dinner already. So the warm bath, quiet play with non-noisy toys, like maybe a book or some soft toys or a simple kind of tea party play, not hide and seek. I know a lot of fathers will do hide and seek and piggyback rights. Try to limit that, and then keep reminding the child, okay, soon it's time for bed. In 15 minutes or in 5 minutes. They may not understand time, but they know that, time is passing. Okay. So then when they're ready to bed, it's easier. So the bedtime routine can be anything. Can be milk first, or a light supper, and then brush teeth. Yeah. If they've already had their bath earlier, many Asian kids don't bathe at 8, 9 o'clock. They bathe very early in the evenings. And so it's maybe just a wash up, some using a soft cloth just to wipe, change into their jammies. But it doesn't matter whether bath time is already inside and how long you're going to do it before bedtime. It's about that predictable predictable routine that you set.
Mm.
Something predictable is something comforting, even to adults. Yeah.
So if both is recommended, what about exercise? Like if it, play some games, exercise, or play some musical dancing. Like, is it because we know that exercise is good to expand the
I
release
would do that during the daytime
daytime?
rather than at bedtime. So 1 to 2 hours after dinner lah, basically.
So
Try to limit the physical exertion. Try and limit that exciting, really fun kind of physical activity. Please don't Zumba lah after dinner. Yeah, yeah.
so you suggested at least how long before the sleep? I mean the
Physical exercise. Physical exercise.
Yeah,
Try and do it during the sunlight hours. When the
Mm,
sun sets, the brain is also getting ready for sleep. So it's about winding down. It's about quiet, calming activities rather than physical exercise already. Physical exercise, try and do it during the day. Of
mm,
course, you have kids who are typically developing, who go, say, for sports practice, swimming and all that, and come back 9, 10 o'clock. But those kids are usually older. Those kids are usually kids with very well regulated behaviors, you
mm,
know. But when you are talking about a young, immature child, when you're talking about a developmentally delayed child, try and reduce that physical exertion or exciting, mentally stimulating kind of play to before dinner time.
mm. Due to the time, I think can we discuss one last questions before we wrap up? It's about the nowadays there are a lot of meditations and sleep apps to help with the sleep, like the music, the applications from the phone.
Okay.
Yeah, to help the children to fall asleep. They have sounds, stories, and tunes. So what is your opinions about regarding this sleeping app?
If it's free, why not try it? There are apps. I think the Calming Minds one from Australia. There are a lot. These are not meditation apps. These are mindfulness apps, I think, right? These mindfulness apps, they are a bit different from meditation because meditation is trying to empty your mind, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, my interpretation, I may be wrong, but my interpretation of meditation is that it's a dissociation between your surroundings and your mind. You know, it's just focusing on certain thing and detaching yourself from your busy mind. Mindfulness is similar to that extent, but it's not detachment. It's being aware of your surroundings, say your physiologic breathing, heart rate, the sounds around you, how your seat feels under your legs, how if you're lying down, you put your hands on your tummy, how it feels like as you breathe. Basically, it's focusing on things around you without having to change anything. And letting go helps with the relaxation. Just being present helps with the relaxation. What doesn't help relaxation, what really drives anxiety is thinking about things that you have no control over. Thinking about things that are uncertain. The uncertainty is what drives the anxiety. And so mindfulness apps helps you to just focus on what is tangible, what you can hear, what you can feel, what is around you rather than what's in here. So when you are focusing cognitively, mentally you're focusing on something, how are you going to spare the mental space to think and ruminate about other things? So that I think is my interpretation of mindfulness. So if you have a older child, a more mature child, then mindfulness apps can help. Music and calming ways. And some of them have voiceovers, right? Very calm voice to talk you through all these mindfulness things. Go ahead. But often you need more than one tool in your toolkit. You need more than one thing to help you if you have a sleep problem. Yeah.
Sounds like the mindfulness app is helpful for the adults as well. Adults.
Yeah. On and off, I will revisit the mindfulness apps.
So I think that's all for today. Thank you so much, Dr. Cindy, for your sharings. And so
Thank you
before
for
we
having
end, is there any takeaway message for the viewers?
Uh, I think I've said pretty much all that I want to say. Just hang in there. I think these two shall pass. Sleep problems, pandemic, these two shall pass.
All right. So
Okay.
thank you so much for the sharing
Thank you.
and for the very important topics of sleep. So we have gained a lot from the sharings. I believe our viewers also benefited greatly. So this sharing will be available shortly on our Facebook page. So you can like this page and also to follow our page. So you can watch it again and share it with those who find it helpful. So thank you so much again, and thank you for everyone